For the past 6 months, I've been working with Frida over on Instagram, who has helped me get from 25% body fat down to 15% body fat. But most importantly, has taught me tactics that have turned out and worked out into my lifestyle. So in this video, I will be going over the top 5 things that having a health coach like Frida has taught me. So first off, what made me get a health coach? So I'm a clinical weight loss practitioner, and you'd think I'd have all the answers, right? Well, it turns out that it's much easier to keep other people accountable than it is yourself. I have done short body fat decreases in the past, but I've never really felt sustainable, and reversing out of them left me worse than where I started. So I contacted Frida at the start of January this year, and I was in Canada on a ski holiday, which feels like so long ago now with all this COVID stuff. And I had a DEXA scan when I landed back in Australia, and I was calculated at 24.8% body fat, which is 0.2% off being technically classed as obese, which is not good. So lack of muscle, large deposits of body fat, and inconsistent exercise routines all led me to this point, even though I'd been following a ketogenic diet for the past 4 to 5 years. So I had this crazy goal that if I could somehow get a 6-pack before I turned 30, I'd be happy. It was something that I never thought I'd be able to achieve, and honestly, it felt impossible by myself. So Frida jumped in and gave me all of the details I needed, and we started what's called a fat loss phase. So just remember, fat loss is very different to weight loss, and over the 6 months, with the help of Frida, I was able to lose close to 12 kilos of body fat, which is just a little bit over 25 pounds, and gained 3 kilos of muscle, just over 6.5 pounds of muscle. So that sort of displaces the whole you can't lose and gain at the same time. That's ridiculous, and I did it. So first off, if you want to hire Frida to help you with your own fat loss journey, you can get in contact with her over on Instagram, which is linked in the description below, to discuss pricing. As a neuroscientist, she is the best at giving you methods that are backed by research and gives you the necessary information without all the additional nonsense that can often lead to analysis paralysis. So take a look at this image on the screen here. I'm very, very happy with those results. But what was it that helped me get those results? Well, let's go over the 5 main things that Frida helped me understand was the key to my success. 1. Tracking macros. Whilst I was following a ketogenic diet prior to starting with Frida, I'd never really tracked my macros for any longer than 3 to 4 weeks. I followed an arbitrary ratio and didn't really think about it all that much. So working with Frida has taught me the benefit of not only tracking macros, but tracking steps, tracking total carbs and not just net carbs, and how macros are not stagnant, they are forever changing, but need change with purpose. The one thing that a lot of people do when they start tracking macros is what I like to call fitting their food into their macro puzzle, which is hardly ever works. So it's best to plan either the night before or at least become familiar with the types of meals that fit into those macros. Otherwise, when you eventually transition away from tracking, you will go back to old habits, which eventually put you back to square one. So number 2 is consistency. So along with tracking macros, the next aspect that Frida helped me allow to understand was the ability to be consistent. Consistency doesn't mean having everything perfect all the time. It means adjusting to the point where you are able to maintain a specific set of rules consistently. This could relate to macros, but it also applies to workouts and NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Consistency is the essence of lifestyle, but you just need to make sure what you are consistently doing is pushing you in the right direction. Consistency will look different for everyone, so don't get caught up in the all or nothing mentality, as this usually backfires and gives you the false idea that when something goes wrong, you may as well throw in the towel. Consistency can be flexible, but will likely just have different timelines than what you're used to. Number 3 is carbs. I always thought tracking net carbs was the easiest way to go, because after all, fiber has no impact on glucose levels, right? Well, this is true, but when you only track net carbs, junk food that is disguised as keto friendly, because the net carbs start to creep in, and you end up replacing your love of bread with a low carb bread that's just jacked full of ultra crazy ingredients like pure gluten and straight up oat fiber, and even in some cases bamboo fiber. So not only do those foods have zero nutritional value, but they don't make you change your lifestyle. So when you decide to quit keto, you'll be back into your old habits before you know it. I was under the false impression that when tracking total carbs, you had to keep your total carbs super low. Honestly, I hated that idea since I love being able to eat vegetables, and tracking something like 10 total carbs just turns into a diet of ground beef, bacon, and eggs, which seriously sounds unappealing to a foodie like myself and makes it feel even more like a diet rather than healthy eating. So I started with 40 total carbs and even had days where I was close to 100 total carbs. Why? Because everyone's carb tolerance is different. And to follow a number like 20 grams of total carbs for everyone across the board is like saying everyone should eat the same food, the same time, with the same utensils. It is a huge generalization, so jump over to Frida's profile and ask her about pricing, and you can work with her to find out your own carb tolerance, because I assure you, it's probably not 20. Number 4, NEAT and strength training. As my main goal was fat loss, and if you are looking to lose weight, your goal probably should be fat loss as well, strength training was super important. I was under the false impression that cardio like running and cycling was super important for fat loss, but it turns out it's really not. Cardio is fantastic at improving endurance, increasing mitochondria health, and increasing brain-derived neurotropic factors, or BDNF, but in my case it was inhibiting my ability to gain muscle, so I stopped. Instead, I focused on fat loss through diet and walking, and muscle gain through weight training. So what was more important was ensuring I was lifting weights and using good technique, and working on my imbalances that had become weaknesses by always trying to lift as heavy as I possibly could. There's absolutely no point in being able to squat with 100 kilos on your back if your right leg is doing all the work. Exercises like split squats and single leg Romanian deadlifts were the key to improving everything across the board for me. So Frida uses a technique where you go into a specific RPE, or what's called relative perceived exertion. This doesn't take into account the amount of weight you lifted, only how close you were to failure. And this is really important because this can change from day to day and will change on your own personal ability to perform a movement without technical failure. Last but not least, accountability. It certainly makes you pick up your game when you have someone else looking over your macros. This doesn't mean you can sneak in a few extra carbs here and there without logging it. It means that accountability without judgment is a really important part of fat loss. If a set of numbers keeps fluctuating, it likely means that you're not following a plan that is sustainable, and it's important for someone to tell you that. It also means you can't convince yourself to cheat, because it's much harder to convince someone else 4 days later that it was a good idea to stuff your face with cake than it is to stick to your macros. Not every day will be 100% perfect, but being in an acceptable range is important, and accountability makes that possible. So I hope those tips help you find a little more clarity in your own program, and I am so grateful for Frida's expertise in both nutrition and exercise, and will be working with her as I learn to gain more muscle without adding a crazy amount of fat, which is very important once you reach your goal. So if you think Frida can help you also, or you are having trouble with any of the topics noted throughout this video, get in contact with Frida and talk about pricing and start from there. Frida is an expert in what she does, so she doesn't have time for people who are not going to commit, both financially and mentally. However, if you are really looking to change your life, she is the one to work with. So I hope that video has been really helpful. Frida's Instagram handle is in the comments below. So even if you're not currently looking at changing your own body right now, jump over and just give her a follow on her account. So take care, and I will see you in the next video.